2A Readers Theater proudly presents Pipaluk and the Whales by John Himmelman.
The night was bitter cold. Pipaluk shivered, but she did not complain. She squeezed closer to her father as their sled carried them home. This had been her first hunting trip. The food and warm pelts would help her get them through the long winter.
"You will make a good hunter," Pippa said her father. Pipaluk smiled. Her father's warm words melted some of the chill from her bones.
The dogs pulled the sled swiftly through the Arctic night. Then, suddenly, they stopped and began to howl and cry.
"The dogs can hear what we cannot," said her father. "Something is wrong. We will let them lead us." Pipaluk listened hard. All she heard was the wind. The dogs brought them to a ledge. The Pipaluk and their father looked in the distance.
"The ice is moving," shouted Pipaluk. "That is not the ice, Pipaluk. Those are whales," said father. They were beluga whales. She had often seen the whales gathering in the ice holes, but she had never seen so many.
So many beluga whales in one place would provide the village with enough food to last many seasons. Pipaluk and her father moved closer to the whales.
The sudden cold has closing up the ice hole. The whales cannot hold their breath long enough to swim beneath the ice to open sea. "We cannot hunt them this way," said her father.
"Why can't we hunt them?" asked Pipaluk. "The whales have helped keep our people alive for many centuries. We owe them too much to slaughter them when they are helpless. We must get help from the village," said her father. The villagers gathered tools to cut the ice. They loaded sleds with tents and food and followed Pipaluk and her father to the ice hole.
"The hole is growing smaller. The whales will drown if we don't keep it open," said one of the elders.
Pipaluk and the villagers chipped away at the edges of the ice to keep it from freezing over. The whales were packed so tightly, Pipaluk could have walked across them to the other side of the opening.
Their mouths seemed to be turned up in gentle smiles, but they did not look happy. The whales moaned and whistled. It was a dreadful thing to hear. Pipaluk knew the whales sensed the danger they were in.
Owen, one of the elders, knew they would need more than picks and axes to freeze the whales. He sent a man to get help from a fishing village. They could send a ship called an icebreaker. It would be able to make a channel in the ice to the open sea.
Day and night, the people of the village chipped away the edge of the opening. Even Pipaluk's little brother wanted to help. Her mother would not let him go. She was afraid he would fall in the water. Pipaluk watched the older whales push the young calves to the surface so they could breathe. "My mother would do that for me," she thought, and she worked harder.
Many miles away, the icebreaker began its journey. Days passed. The people worked day and night to keep the hole open. "The whales are growing weak. They're starving," said Olan.
A woman ran back to the village and returned with some fish that were to feed her through the winter. Soon the other villagers began to share their food with the whales.
One night, Pipaluk sat at the edge of a hole in the ice and watched a young calf. She looked into its large eyes and saw a reflection of the stars. She wanted the calf to see more nights filled with stars. Pipaluk was filled with such sadness that she could not hold it inside her. She began to sing. It was a song for the little whale with the stars in its eyes. Soon others joined in the singing. The whales grew silent as they listened.
The moon came and went and returned again. The whales grew very weak. Pipaluk sang to the whale with the stars in its eyes. She sang to all the whales. It made her feel better. One night, Pipaluk was awakened by a noise. She looked out of her tent and let out a cry of joy. It was an icebreaker. At last it had arrived. The people stood and cheered as the icebreaker inched its way toward them.
Finally, the ship broke through into the hole where the whales were breathing. "Go, you are free!" shouted Pipaluk.
But the whales would not follow the ship out to sea. They were afraid of the huge dark giant that made so much noise.
"Go," shouted Pipaluk, but the whale stayed. She wanted to jump into the water and push them. She was so angry and frightened for the whales.
Pipaluk heard Olin speaking to the ship's captain. "I am sorry," said the captain. "We are running low on fuel. If we don't set off, we'll be trapped here too."
The captain went back aboard the ship. It slowly turned around to head toward the ocean. "They can't leave, though, Pipaluk. That the ship was the whale's last chance."
Pipaluk heard the huge chunks of ice squealing and crunching beneath the ship's bow as it made its way out through the channel. Pipaluk covered her ears and sang out loud so she would not hear the noise. Some of the whales came to her. "Don't look at me, go with the ship," she shouted. Suddenly she had an idea. She ran to catch up with the icebreaker. A couple of whales followed her.
The captain saw what was happening. "Bring her aboard. The whales are following her song," he shouted to the crew.
Pipaluk was helped onto the ship. "Keep singing. You have given me an idea," said the captain. He ran inside the cabin.
Pipaluk thought about the calf with stars in its eyes. She had to save him, so she sang. Her voice was loud, but the whales could not hear her over the ship's engines.
Moments later, the captain returned. Music was blaring out of the ship's speakers. "Let's see if they like classical music too," said the captain. Then the most amazing thing happened. The whales began to follow the ship. The villagers cheered as they ran along the side of the channel. Pipaluk's father set out with a dog sled. He would wait for Pippa at the edge of the sea. The sun rose and set as the icebreaker pushed the shrinking channel. At last, it reached the open sea. The whales were free. To help Pipaluk down from the ship, she ran to her father. They stood and watched the whales, the leap and swim in the open water. Pipaluk picked up a handful of powdery snow and threw it into the wind in celebration.
The whale with the stars in its eyes swam up to her. Pipaluk knelt down and stroked its head.
"Stay out of holes in ice," she whispered. The whale gave a quiet whistle and then joined its family in the sea.
"Come, Pippa, let's go home," said her father.
Pipaluk climbed into the snow. She shivered within the layers of fur she wore, but she did not complain. She squeezed closer to her father as their sled carried them home under the winter sky.